So this time around, of course, I'm still playing Blood Mage, but I decided to take an old build that I really enjoyed last week and kind of play around with it and see if I can't league start with it. First and foremost, I want to say that Blood Mage leveling has gotten a lot better, and it's just a lot easier to play really any skill you want with it. That being said, ED Contagion for leveling is just miles ahead, I think, of most other skills. So I would highly recommend you level with that, at the very least until the end of Act 4, moving into Interludes, where you're able to better gear towards pivoting to a different build. But even then, this build doesn't really come fully online until you get cast on crit, and enough crit for that, which is probably around 60 to 80% to even feel remotely good. Now that being said, you can also play a different variation. I do know Garotha has a Frost Wall Fireball setup, and that seems to look pretty decent as well. It's a self-cast Fireball build, so it's going to function a little differently. And that can also utilize Cast on Crit for infusions, which is a new mechanic that I will be going over. But this setup is a little bit more of a one-button build where you're only clicking Ember Fusilade, and then obviously, now that we have Snap, we're going to be clicking that occasionally as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so first off, let's talk about the gear. So to get the build running, it's actually not too bad. There are a lot of uniques that the build can use in place of rares or in place of the chase uniques. But at the same time, the only mandatory unique I'd say is probably Sire Shards. The rest are just going to boost your damage and you're clear by a fairly decent bit. But again, they aren't mandatory, so you can really get this up and running into maps without any of them except for Sire Shards. So, Sire Shards, why do we run this? Well, spells fire 4, or in this case 5 additional projectiles. You can hit the corruption on that mod, which is very powerful. This staff is literally just used for the skill projectiles, and this is used in place of a wand and focus, usually Wrathpith, to just give you a much easier time stacking Ember Fusilade stacks, because how the spell normally works is you usually only generate one Ember Fusilade, and so that doesn't do a lot of damage, and a lot of the times it's really annoying and really expensive on life and mana to be having to cast it over and over again. Previous season, you had to fish for a wild shard proc to proc that 8 additional projectiles, and then you had to keep that proc going by constantly right-clicking Ember Fusilade. And while it wasn't too bad, it did feel a little annoying after playing it for a very long time. So Sire Shards just solves this completely. We don't even need to take any additional projectiles. We don't take any fork or anything like that. We have built-in, obviously. And yeah, I am most likely going to be running this deep into T15 farming, and I'm only really going to swap this if I feel like my damage is hitting a wall. But due to all the other different sources of damage that this build can access, I don't think that's going to be a major problem. Now, the other 2 uniques for this build that I highly recommend is first off Snake Pit. So Snake Pit, what it does is it either lets your projectiles from spells chain one time, or fork, whether it's in the left or right slot. I see a lot of people playing Fireball with fork, and that's not necessarily wrong, but for now, without the insane density of more juice maps, I think chain is going to function better. Also for this build, chain for Ember Fusilade is also going to function slightly better compared to fork. Though at the same time, fork is probably going to make your screen a little bit more cluttered if you're actually into that. So use as you will. It's really not that big of a deal which side you have it on, to be dead honest. Last league I played, I think the majority of the time with this on chain, but I swapped to fork and chain. I swapped between them just to experiment. Seed of Cataclysm is a very powerful ring, specifically, honestly, it kind of feels like it's designed for Blood Mage. It really just gives you crit chance for spells and spell crit damage bonus. And this can be scaled up with caster catalysts. And yeah, it's just overall very high damage providing ring. And if you don't want to run this, you can just run a rare ring. You can run Death Rush for Onslaught, or you can play a couple other unique rings. But overall, I'd say this is a really good option moving into higher tier maps to give you the damage boost that you need. Besides that, the only real notable piece of gear that I'd like to mention is the amulets. You want a +2 amulet with Spirit. This build is pretty starved on Spirit, especially if you want to run Blink. And so getting Spirit on your amulet or your body armor is going to be big. And I would recommend getting it on the amulet because the body armor is actually going to be a very nice way to scale defensives this league. So what they changed about Blood Mage is they moved the base crit over here and Gore Spike over here, as it honestly should have been originally. And this side of the tree then is actually fully accessible, even when taking Gore Spike and Sunder the Flesh. And what these nodes do, this is built in Progenesis from PoE 1 for anyone who plays PoE 1. This is an absurdly strong notable, and I think should always be taken, honestly, on every Blood Mage build. It's just insane. Crimson Power is one that literally just gives you life equal to all the ES on your equipped body armor. Thus, we want to run an insanely high ES body armor. Mine is not so much, but at the same time, I'm running Spirit on mine. What you can do is you can ditch the Spirit here, maybe ditch Blink, and just run a 1k ES body armor, and that's going to give you a lot of life. Now, that being said, without a Reactive Globe, the extra life is really just there for defensive purposes. And so you can kind of balance between or decide between those as you see fit. I personally think right now this is enough tankiness to be clearing T15s, not completely juiced. I will have to do a little bit more testing and just kind of see where the build leads me. Besides that, it's just life and ES on the gloves, boots, and helm. And yeah, that's about it. I will say that the crafting system that they added is very powerful for making your own gear, at least guaranteeing 3 to 4 mods through Desecration. So would highly recommend looking at how new essences are, as well as new Desecration or Abyss crafting mats are used. So I'm running Ember Fusilade as my main cast skill. The skill is currently at 93% crit and 370 crit damage multi. Obviously, I'd like these numbers to be a bit higher, but without Reactive Globe, it's actually pretty hard to crit cap. I have almost every close by crit node on the tree spec'd, and I'm probably going to have to travel out a little bit to get more crit, which is totally fine. So the links that we want to run in this, Fire Mastery is pretty good. We absolutely need Compressed Duration and Swift Affliction. You can take out Swift Affliction, and it's just gonna make you wait a little bit longer, 0.57 seconds. So to show you the difference, without Swift Affliction, you're gonna have to wait a teensy bit of time. That's not necessarily bad because you can cast and move. So you can pre-cast like before you hit the next pack, and once you get to the next pack, the Ember Fusilade should go off. I like to have it almost instant, so I put on 2 less duration gems. You can swap this out for more damage for things such as Deliberation, which is just 20% more damage. Elemental Focus is also okay. Besides that, consider casting's fine. Cast speed on this is already like relatively fast. You don't have to worry too much about it. You don't have to scale it that much either. Finally, I'm running efficiency. So without efficiency, the cost of the skill is pretty high. And because we're also cast on critting, we're going to be draining our mana pool more than anything else. We get a lot of life from remnants now, so it's not too big of a concern regarding life loss. It's more so mana, and this can be fixed later with blood magic and speccing into a couple other things, which I'm going to experiment with and see what works best. Our cast on crit setup is going to be Fireball as our main skill, and we're running Sione's Temper, which is just an upgraded version of Wild Shards. Basically, they will give you stacks for Wild Shards every time it's cast, and when you hit, I believe it's 5 Wild Shards, you will cast 8 projectiles in a circle. This is a really strong lineage support, but you can also just run normal Wild Shards 2 here and perhaps put a different lineage support somewhere else. Inverted Elements, if you decide not to Chaos Convert, could be a really solid option for Ember Fusilade, especially in single target. Besides that, we have 2 energy supports as well as efficiency. So there's not too much damage tied to this fireball. The average hit is like 5.7k, but it's close. It's good enough to be clearing some of the rares, especially with how often we're proccing this. Our 2 other auras are going to be Withering Presence and Blink. So the entire premise around this build is we're doing purple fire, right? So there's a keystone notable up here called Black Flame Covenant, which converts all our fire damage to chaos damage. As such, we can use Wither, and Wither just gives the enemy increased chaos damage taken, which is very, very strong. It's up to 50%. So yeah. Blink, obviously, you don't need to take Blink. I just find it very useful in mapping, especially with a Blood Mage build that can sometimes get caught on low HP in a big pack of mobs. So finally, our new mechanic, Infusions, are actually very, very strong for Fireball. They don't work on Ember Fusilade, but they do work on Fireball even through Cast on Crit. And these just make the Fireballs much larger, and I believe they increase the AoE and as well as damage. And so what we're doing, because of Black Flame Covenant, we're able to ignite and induce flammability onto our enemies with chaos damage from our fire skills. And so this is going to be calculated basically as this. And so when you cast Snap onto someone that is ignited, you get a bunch of remnants, infusion remnants, thanks to harmonic remnants. And overall, this is a very strong skill for killing rares that are a little bit tankier, as well as for bossing. Your actual rotation is very straightforward on this build. You're just literally gonna Ember Fusilade once you ignite the boss, cast Snap to get your infusions, and then back to Ember Fusilading, weaving in Sigil Power and Despair as you need. Despair is literally just Titan Curse, Focus Curse, nothing too special about this. The duration is going to be lower since you are scaling less duration, but that is not too big of a problem. As far as the skill tree goes, this is literally pathing with ED Contagion, and then you can do a light swap to this setup. You would normally path through here and get like skill effect duration when you're leveling, but once we swap to a self-cast fire skill, we're going to want to spec everything into crit. And in our case, we're going to spec everything into crit as well as some meta energy gain and obviously chaos damage. So in order for this build to function, obviously first and foremost, we need Black Flame Covenant. And once we grab that, everything's going to be chaos damage. So we're not going to take any fire damage on the tree as conversion happens before. And we're going to just spec into all the chaos damage nodes that are good for us. Do note, taking increased skill duration is a big no-no for Ember Fusilade. It's just going to make the skill take longer to actually spit out. So I would highly recommend against taking that, unless you have, for some reason, an insane amount of reduce to counteract it. The recover 3% mana when you collect a Revenant is actually really strong for mana sustain, so I would highly recommend taking this cluster over here. Besides that, padding down here is pretty good. We get recover life on kill here as well, some move speed, more crit damage. These nodes are very powerful because our skill is not a chaos skill. We don't lose any max life and ES when we cast, so definitely a free 53% chaos damage, as well as this node right here, which is also pretty solid. Honestly, besides that, just taking the trigger skills to refund energy, as well as the gain increased energy, is going to be really strong. And we'll just get more damage funneling back into our Ember Fusilade because of dynamism as well. The only other real notable thing to mention is forthcoming. This node right here is conveniently placed, and I would recommend taking this just for the less duration, so it feels a little bit smoother. This is definitely optional though. As long as you have below 0.6 hang time on the Ember Fusilade, I think the build feels fine. Besides that, I'm also running 3 jewels. I would recommend without a Wrath Pit that you take double crit chance, and other mods on it are just going to be like whatever is affordable or whatever is available. I would not recommend taking crit damage until you get at least like 80% crit to get the cast on crit feeling smooth. Alright, so I don't have too much more to show about this build. Right now, all I can say is the build's single target on bosses is actually surprisingly crazy. I think in part because of how Ember Fusilade works, because each subsequent hit deals more damage, as seen from the additional quality and the base. It's just a really powerful skill, especially when you can spawn a lot of projectiles, and this skill literally spawns, 6 projectiles at a time. So it definitely is a solid starter. Again, I think Sire with only 4 proj is going for like 8-ish chaos with double sockets, so like definitely look into getting this if you're playing Blood Mage and you're having trouble with the Fireball build. If you don't have this item already, use it. See how that feels. Maybe swap to Ember Fusilade. If you have cast on crit, to make it feel better. You can alternatively also play Ember Fusilade without the cast on crit. Your clear is just going to be much worse. You might want to consider putting Fork onto it and then gem swapping for bossing. That is also an option. I think with Sire though, Ember Fusilade just comes online a lot quicker and doesn't need Wrath Pip, which is a big plus considering how expensive Wrath Pip is. But yeah, I'll be making another update video if I find anything majorly relevant. Otherwise, expect a full build guide once I get it up and going in the Juice T15 maps. Thanks for watching. Hope it helped. Hope you are able to utilize this information.